Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we are met to discuss something of very grave importance to every one of us. For one thing, we're all going to have to think about it someday. What if you lost your home and you had to search around to find another home? Well, I have an offer for a new home that you might want to consider. This home is solidly built. It's made completely of marble. It has all the amenities. It has cold running water at least every time it rains. And you don't have to worry about the landlord throwing you out because the lease is forever. All you have to do to get this cozy little love nest is call your undertaker and get yourself a little bit dead.
Oh dear.
Yes, because tonight we are talking about that final frontier that we call death, the end of life. And it's not something that only some of us will have to think about, but every one of us, especially you, because I'm going to kill you right now. No, just kidding. Just kidding, folks. Well, tonight on our Trekosophy, the Star Trek philosophy podcast, we have our very special crew who I hope they won't frighten anyone because they're really very nice guys who are not scary at all. First, we have our Undertaker who, after we slay each episode, he prepares the remains for viewing. Mr. Chris McGee.
Do we want this one with eyes open or closed?
And also, we have a much beloved cast member who we are planning to kill off by the end of this episode so we can spend the whole next movie trying to bring him back. Mr. Brandon Kirby.
I debate often with Benjamin McLean. I should be euthanized.
Ooh, that's a tough one. That burns. All right. And I am the Peter Lorre impersonator in the red shirt, Ben McLean. And this is Trekosophy, the Star Trek philosophy podcast. It wasn't the best Peter Lorre impersonation, but I gave it a shot. Well, it's not good.
There you have it. Let's talk about death.
Right, and that's a real downer. Particularly the episode we're talking about today is Emanations, the Star Trek Voyager episode. And I mean, it's a good episode. I'm not sure I agree with all the ideas in it, but it's a good episode.
Yeah,
it challenges you to think.
It wouldn't make like a Voyager top 10, but it.
Yeah, probably not, but it's a good episode, and it makes you think, and that makes a good episode.
Well, it's a great episode for Trekosophy.
Yeah, certainly. And
why don't we give a brief summary? Chris, did you want to do that? I can take it.
Get us the Memory Alpha summary, or if you want to summarize it in your own words, that works too. Sure hope that Peter Lorre voice doesn't totally suck.
It's too late now.
Yeah.
Yeah, a one-sentence summary on Memory Alpha. Guys, you gotta do better than this. Come on. Yeah. Investigating mineral deposits on an asteroid, Harry Kim is trapped on an alien planet, which absolutely tells you nothing about what makes this episode so great.
Wow, that is like the worst summary ever. Why not just replace every entry on Memory Alpha with that, and just replace, if it's an original series episode, just replace Kim with Spock and or whoever, and you've got it, right? Because that's every Star Trek episode, right? So it doesn't tell you anything.
Well, what happens? Ben, did you want to do it?
You go ahead. I talk too much.
Yeah, he's talking too much.
Well, the episode, why I found it really interesting, on the stereotypical asteroid, it turns out that there's corpses everywhere. It's an alien graveyard, and the aliens are somehow transported to there from their home planet.
Is it hither or thither?
Well, I didn't say hither or thither. Well, it would be thither. It would definitely be
transported thither from their own planet. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Now, hitherto, we shall be discussing what happens on the planet. What you have is a group of people who think they're being transported off into this celestial afterlife where they meet all their loved ones who've already passed on. And it's, there's this wonderful theology around it, but in reality, they're just going to rot. So Kim, when the process was reversed, showed up and said, yeah, there's a bunch of corpses there. They were all shocked to find out they were going to not meet their loved ones, but just sit and decay. So the whole episode is about the backlash of this planet finding that out, or at least some of the members of the planet and some of the members of the clergy wrestling with that concept. And then, of course, you have the turnaround at the very end where it turns out there's energy being drained from the corpses that's going to exist in the ring around the asteroid, and they exist as pure energy. So who knows what happens? Nobody really knows.
That's pretty good, except I might also point out that you're missing what I regard as half the episode, which is
the lady?
That this lady replaces Kim on Voyager for a brief time, in which she expected to have died, but is brought on to Voyager. And she has to deal with all kinds of confusions. And that, for me, is actually more interesting than what's happening to Kim. But I'm just weird.
Well, everyone's weird. That's what makes normal people themselves weird. It's abnormal to be normal.
Yeah. Well, it deals on both sides of the episode. The Kim misplaced on this alien planet and this lady misplaced on Voyager. Both of them are faced with a situation of people finding out that the afterlife, or what they thought about the afterlife, appears to be wrong or disproven by the facts or by experience. And then they have to how do they cope with that? How do they deal with it? And all that.
I don't agree with you that the message of the episode is what they believe is wrong.
I didn't say that, but I said they're confronted with that as the problem.
Okay, fair enough.
And that's what's the first, what's it in the first act? What is set up that has to be resolved in the third act? There's a word for it. Well, conflict is one word, but there's another word for it in dramatic structure. I can't remember. Wish I could remember. Oh, well.
I don't know.
But at least, like in a Hegelian sense, that's the thesis of the episode.
They're basically in the same situation that we are. As they're confronting this conflict with a mysterious word, they are in the same position we are, because we know there's corpses too. We can go to a graveyard and see corpses.
Yeah.
But we still have beliefs about the afterlife. Well, some of us do.
Well, I think everyone does. Atheists think you rot in the ground, but that is a belief.
Well, sure. And some people would claim to be completely agnostic and just not know.
Oh, that's true. But the thing is, when you're a strict materialist, that does logically imply that you rot in the ground. And some people get offended if you point that out. You say, look, if strict materialism is true, then you rot in the ground. And some people get all offended if you point that out. But I'm just saying that is the logical conclusion of that philosophy. It's not a refutation. It's not a criticism. It's what the idea says.
Sure. I actually found a lot of comfort. I won't say comfort. That's the right word. there's something that Janeway said that really resonated with me. And I don't remember the verbatim quote, but it was something, what we don't know about death far exceeds what we do know.
I think that's probably true for just about everybody who hasn't died.
Well, I remember, we'll personalize it a bit here. I remember I was watching my grandfather pass away. I was with him as he passed on. And what happened quantifiably is, pauses between breaths just became longer and longer. In terms of what I know, what I could see, what I could logically deduce, he just stopped breathing. But there's that, there are more things, Horatio, in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophies. And I can take the universe, and I can take my sum total, my knowledge, and I could say it's exactly equal to what there is to know. Let's say I'm all-knowing. Well, that's obviously absurd. It's more than what there is to know. So most of what I know would be an illusion. But I don't think that's justifiable or easily substantiated. So the only option left is to say, I know less than what there is to know. And the quote from Hamlet would apply. And when I take this attitude, I don't want to reason from the whole to the part, but if I take that attitude of humility in death and say, okay, he just stopped breathing. That's what I know. There could either be more to this, and death is an illusion, and the Eastern mystics are onto something. That could be exactly what happened, or what I know is less than what actually went on. And there's the undiscovered country. And with that attitude of humility, that makes me suspect that there's an afterlife. That's my argument.
All right, and that seems to resonate with a lot of what Socrates had to say in the Phaedo.
Right.
It seems to be you think you just pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, summarized the gist of a lot of what was really important about the Phaedo. Seems to me. So good job, Brandon.
It's not a metaphysical argument. It's just because as a metaphysical argument, it's logically flawed, but as an attitude that I take.
Yeah. Well, you have to. I think most people would say that the logic in the Phaedo is kind of flawed as well.
Yeah.
But
it's how I look at things.
Yeah.
Which I don't think. I don't think that would be logically fallacious.
Yeah. Well, and the humility thing is important, and that's one of the big pillars of philosophy, at least in the Socratic tradition, is this humility to know that you do not know, and that's important and stuff. But I don't know I don't know if there's much else to say on that part of it. I think you said it.
Well, I think there's something parsing that it does too. I'm not
something
in any
what?
sense of material. It's parsing in the other direction as well, a double-edged sword, because a lot of the people that I talk to about the afterlife under the Christian umbrella have it all figured out. And you watch all these eschatology DVDs and read the studies, and they'll tell you. People come knocking on my door, and they'll have fancy pamphlets and stickers that they can draw it out for me.
Yeah.
And the stories that they give are often conflicting, and I find that significant because when I read Scripture, you hear about 3 different levels of heaven, a resurrection of the dead, a judgment, possibly a second judgment, heaven and hell, a new heaven, a new earth, 1,000-year reign, the kingdom of God. I can't piece that together, and I'm okay with not being able to piece that together because with humility, I can say, look it. I love Jesus, but I don't know. I don't have to know anything about the afterlife. There's so much of this is non-linear that I'm okay with not being able to have a straightforward, strict proposition about what's going to happen. I can just treat it as an undiscovered country.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to argue eschatology with you because I don't think the audience would be that interested, and I don't think that would be the best way to pay respects. But I might just give my alternative view that does conflict with yours, even though I don't know whether very much of an argument would happen. I might say first that I can agree that what we don't know about death far exceeds what we do know. And I can agree that of the importance of having some important degree of humility about it. And I can agree that Scripture, at least what you think of as Scripture, doesn't give all that clear of a picture. But I'm a Latter-day Saint, and as a Latter-day Saint, I would claim to be privy to additional sources of information that the rest of Christianity is not privy to because they do not accept it. And these do give additional information.
Okay.
Which does give me a sort of a picture. But at the same time, I want to also stress that it does not answer all questions. It could be wrong. I mean, at least logically, it could be wrong. And I do believe in that idea of humility. I just don't think that having a picture, a clearer picture, is necessarily at odds with having the humility to recognize that you could be wrong. You know, just have some reasonable degree of fallibilism about it all.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that adding the Book of Mormon helps your cause, because it's not as if all Mormons agree.
No, they don't.
So, I mean, really, it's just giving, what's the George MacDonald quote? More plentiful material for misinterpretation?
That happens. Although, being RLDS, the RLDS church has very different views in the afterlife from the Mormons, and some different sources,
that's my point.
And some different sources of information from the Mormon church. I would argue the more information you have, it can narrow your range of interpretations, assuming you take it seriously. All right, well, here's the thing. Let's not argue eschatology back and forth. I don't think that's going to.
Okay, first of all, let me ask you this, and I'll put this in. What is eschatology?
The study of the last things, of what happens after death.
Okay.
So
that's what you two have been discussing right now.
Yeah.
The afterlife. I'm very, very uncomfortable with too many statements about the afterlife. And Ben seems to be slightly more comfortable with it than me.
Well, you know, everything that we know about the afterlife is just hearsay. I mean, we don't know exactly what is there. It depends upon what you believe. Ben clearly has a strong belief, and he believes in it enough that he's comfortable with discussing that. I guess, Kirby, maybe your belief, whether it's the same or different, I don't know, or slightly or whatever.
It's gonna be different.
You're not so comfortable with it that you want to say, yeah, this is definitely how it's going to be. And Ben's just the opposite. So we're not going to be able to agree upon that. Everyone's going to have
probably
different belief, and a lot of our listeners probably have different beliefs. So there's no way we can. We'll just be going back and forth until we're blue in the face.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was just saying. I don't know if that's going to help much, but I might say two things, though. One is that for Christians, and this is different from other religions, for Christians, we have at least the testimony of someone who has been there. That is Jesus Christ. Christians believe Jesus died and rose again on the third days. Mm-hmm. So we would claim to have a source of information from experience, which other religions don't claim to have. That does make the ideas about death somewhat important for Christianity. Also, St. Paul says, I would not have you be ignorant about what happens to those who have gone on. He says that in one of his letters. So, I mean, this is a topic that Christians ought to have conversations about. But I don't know if here is the time and place to do that.
Well, let's talk about philosophy and bring it back to Star Trek.
That's what I was wanting to get to, yes.
Chris, I got to take issue with something you were saying, because as it turns out, a lot of what the clergy was saying on the planet was fallacious. And I'll say Harold Camping was wrong. We know he was wrong.
Who's that?
He was the fellow that predicted the world was going to end on like April 21st, 2011.
Yeah.
Augustine points this out going back to the City of God, just how he doesn't have time with people who say, oh, the end is near. Well, not the end is near. That's a fair enough statement. But just giving these, I've read the Bible. I found the secret code. Here it is. Give me your money. And his radio station
that's basically
had his charitable receipts renewed for the summertime after the end of the world was coming. So he didn't even believe in what he was saying. But a lot of this is I think you can disprove a lot of what people believe.
Some of it.
Exactly, some of it. There, you can disprove some of it, but there are so many different beliefs out there.
Yeah. I think there's one area in which experience, and not just Christian experience, but a sort of universal human experience, I think exists that ought to be brought into the discussion. And that is in near-death experiences. This has been studied. And there are several patterns that emerge in near-death experiences that people report. I don't have the research to cite on this, but I think everyone will kind of recognize it, and it's in the literature somewhere, all right? But it's basically people have a few basic types or categories of near-death experiences, and this goes across all cultures as well, as far as I know. One is people see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
That's one common experience. Another one is people are reunited with family in a sort of idyllic environment of some kind. Some people have even described a sort of garden-like atmosphere in which they are reunited with family. Still others have described a kind of frightening, dark experience. And those three, the light at the end of the tunnel, the reuniting with family, and the sort of scary and dark experience, those are some combination of the above, one or more of the above three basic types of experiences are what people of all different cultures and religions in fact report experiencing from near-death experiences. Now, if you're a materialist, you could put this down to psychological factors. You can explain it as just what neurons happen to fire in the brain when we're very near death.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even give Freudian interpretations to some of it if you want or whatever. But I'm just saying, if you believe there is any kind of afterlife, these might be valid clues. And so that just having that information to inform the discussion, which is empirical. I mean, what I just said, that is from experience. That's not religiously motivated. At least I don't think it is. In fact, it doesn't fit particularly well with my own religion. Because my religion says that everyone upon death immediately goes to God, to meet God, to be judged.
Doesn't fit with mine either. Christ said that in the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given marriage.
Well, the RLDS says that as well. Remember, we're the ones who always opposed polygamy and celestial marriage because of that. So the RLDS views in the afterlife are very different from the Mormon views. But I just might say, so I only pointed that out to illustrate that what I just said from experience is not religiously motivated. It doesn't square particularly well with my own religion.
Right.
Well, in the episode, the woman who replaced Harry Kim had to come to grips with the fact that her picture of the afterlife didn't play out.
Right.
And there's so many conflicting pictures of the afterlife. That would mean 99% of the human population has to come to grips with the fact that our picture of the afterlife isn't going to play out.
At least not exactly the way we expect, if we expect anything. Well,
exactly.
I think we all expect something. That's the thing. I don't think we can avoid expecting something. There's always going to be a sort of default thing. And for people who don't have a specific picture, I think what they sort of expect is sort of oblivion, sort of end, nothing, So if anything happens, that's unexpected, So there's always going to be some expectation. It seems to me.
There's also reincarnation too.
There's another kind of expectation.
I anticipate an undiscovered country with unimaginable joys, unimaginable horrors. I anticipate something like that, but I'll tell you what really grinds my gears. And you saw this play out too with the clergy in the episode. Yeah. I remember reading, there was an article by a Universalist, and that's somebody who believes that in the end everyone goes to heaven.
Yeah.
La-di-da. And he said, I preached, doctrine about eternal hellfire for 20 years and then found out I was wrong because universalism's true. And he said, he was talking about Jerry Falwell because Jerry Falwell had just passed away. And he said Falwell always
big Protestant guy. Wasn't he involved in the Left Behind books? No, I'm thinking of Jerry Jenkins. Jerry Falwell. He was a televangelist, right?
Yeah, televangelist. He had a university, Baptist University.
That's
anyways,
right. Okay.
Falwell passed away, and he was a hellfire guy himself. And he said Falwell spent his whole life preaching that Hitler and Genghis Khan go to hell. If that's the sort of person you are, you go to hell. Imagine his surprise when he walked through the pearly gates and he saw Hitler and Genghis Khan waiting for him with open arms. I was so bothered by that in the article. Not for obvious reasons.
I'm bothered by that for the obvious reasons.
I'm bothered by that because he's so dogmatic. The fellow said, I preached hellfire for 20 years, and turns out I was wrong. The only thing I know is that this guy's wrong about the afterlife, or he has a tendency to be wrong. And he still is dogmatic, uses shocking imagery, and he hasn't given that up. He may have switched sides, but he's still got this dogmatic attitude about something he, by his own admission, can't put two and two together on.
Well,
I don't like the attitude that people have where they're just so sure of their interpretation of passages that are parable in nature, heavy in imagery, and I'm not discarding them because they're parable or imagery. I love parables and imagery.
Yeah.
I just don't think they make for good literal pictures of the afterlife. And
I can agree. I might say, there's a whole bunch of things I could say about that. Well, one is I can respect the guy on a certain level because he's got the will to truth. He's interested in the truth, whatever the truth turns out to be. That's something I can respect. Although I think both of those positions of his are wrong, at least he's looking,
Well, he's talking. I don't know that he's looking.
Okay, well, it seems like he had to have been looking at some point to change his mind so radically. Maybe he's closed now. That might be it. Maybe he's too overly dogmatic now. That's a problem. But if he changed his mind so radically, then he had to have critically re-examined, I would hope, his former ideas. And that's the will to truth. I mean, there seems to be something to respect about that.
Well, I don't know that it was a rational shift, though. There could have been something else that prompted this shift. Maybe somebody who he really admired was an atheist, passed away or something. I don't know. Like, to me, there's a big question mark. There's a question mark with his heart, and there's a question mark I have with the afterlife.
Okay. Well, I'm
all about
say
question marks.
Well, another thing you said about imagery and parables and so forth. Well, the RLDS view on the afterlife, and I have to say the RLDS view because this is not the general Latter-day Saint view. This is the RLDS view I'm talking about here. The RLDS view on the afterlife tries, as far as I can tell, to take that into account as much as possible. We try, I think, to avoid, at least my understanding of it, tries very hard to avoid taking imagery literally, and rather tries to look at as much as possible at the moral situation. And this idea that there will be a final justice and a final accounting that will be absolutely fair to every single person ever. And that's something C.S. Lewis tries to get at with The Great Divorce, which, I mean, oh my gosh, even if you weren't already a C.S. Lewis fan, and we hadn't talked about C.S. Lewis before on this, I'd have to bring up The Great Divorce if we're going to have a podcast. You are agreeing with Lewis in his introduction where he says, I hope people don't actually speculate about the afterlife. Lewis says that in his introduction. I, on the other hand, I think he got a lot of it pretty much close to right. And I wish he'd been a little bit more bold in asserting that, at least asserting that he got the moral picture of it right. So,
yeah, Lewis was an ideal preacher, very humble and very, what's the word I'm looking for? He taught while being humble about his teaching.
yeah.
You had a point that I thought was really interesting that you had brought up in the first, in the pre-recording.
Yeah. Wow, we might have to make this a two-parter.
What was it?
Well, all right. I hope we can stuff this in 10 minutes. But it's the situation that, what's the lady's name who dies and gets brought back to life on the Enterprise? What's her name?
Tara. P-T-E-R-A. Tara.
Did I got that right?
Yeah.
The Enterprise?
I mean, Voyager.
Voyager's
the Enterprise. It's the ship.
On the ship.
Yeah. Okay, so she's on Voyager. And
is it Lindsay Ballard?
She expected to be dead. And she is confronted with an afterlife that is not at all like the one she expected. And it's not merely that it's better.
Oh, from the episode.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I thought you were talking about one of the later Voyager episodes.
No, we're talking about emanations here.
We're back to emanations.
I'm on topic.
Well, I'm not.
Okay. So, she comes on board Voyager and she's confronted with an afterlife that is completely unlike her expectations. And not only is it's not unlike her expectations in a way that squares with the kind of thing we get in The Great Divorce, where it's better than or worse than our expectations because we couldn't have thought of it. It is instead that she was flatly wrong. That is what she's confronted with.
Yeah, what a goof.
And what do you do then? What if it turns out you're wrong? Or there's a strong indicator that you're wrong? What do you do then? And it's interesting to see how different people respond to that. One of the most famous is Bertrand Russell.
Oh, right.
someone asked him, what if you died, you're famous atheist, what if you died and you met God and you found out there really is God after all? And Bertrand Russell responds, I'd ask the old gentleman why he didn't give me more evidence of his existence ahead of time. So, I mean, that brings up a whole bunch of really interesting philosophical stuff. What questions would you ask God if you meet him? But also just, what if you're confronted with a universe that is completely unlike everything you'd believed previously? So all your previous beliefs are in shambles. What do you do then? That's kind of a disturbing question, no matter what your current beliefs are, isn't it?
What was the Cartesian question?
That sounds like it needs more words to go after it.
I assume a lot. It's
Explain. What do you mean by Cartesian question?
Yeah, because you know,
Rene
it's
Descartes was a drunken fart. I drink, therefore I am.
Okay.
Descartes said, doubt everything. Doubt everything you've ever believed. You'll have great fun. Just give it a shot. Doubt it. Doubt that you have a physical body. Doubt that you're Trekosophizing right now. Doubt that you're listening to Trekosophy. Doubt your religion, your political beliefs. Just say, to the flames with you. What can't you doubt? Well, you can't doubt that something's doubting. And he builds a system from there.
Yeah, and that was the beginning of what we might call modern philosophy. The father of modern philosophy would probably be Descartes.
Yeah, I don't know. Sure. I think it's healthy to say, what if you're wrong? But there's some things that you're not wrong about.
I think so too. There's got to be some things you're not wrong about.
Just have a philosophical system based on those things. That was Descartes' idea. It was like the way he did it.
So you're a Cartesian then?
No, heavens no. But well, I appreciate his heart. You know, the will to truth thing that you were talking about. A friend of mine said it best. It was in a debate on intelligent design. He's a philosophy type. And he was talking with William Dembski. And he said, people are saying intelligent design isn't a science, you can't talk about it. And he said, well, Dembski may be wrong, but he's not fundamentally wrong-headed. I like the way he put that. And to me, it's the same with Descartes. For the people on the planet, yeah, there very well could have been an afterlife. At the end of the episode, you find out that there was something beyond their very corporeal imagination of what would happen. But with this analysis, this rigorous analysis that the Starfleet crew gives, okay, well, maybe there's something going on here. So I think you can take this methodical doubt, maybe what if I'm wrong, and go somewheres with it. Emanations, your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I wanted to, hang on, how should I form this? What was Robert Beltram's character again? Chakotay, yeah. I just wanted to punch the hell out of Chakotay for being an absolute dick. I mean, he was like, no, we can't disturb them. No, we can't even do passive scans. No, we can't do this. We have to respect them and blah, blah, blah. What a wet blanket.
Well, and you know, Chakotay's a boxer, so I don't know that I'd recommend punching him, but maybe phasering him.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if I brought this up in an earlier podcast or not, but there was something Chakotay did that really irked me. It was in that same sequence, so it wasn't the same thing. I get respect for the dead. He was a little bit of a male genitalia about it, but the one thing he did was he drew a lot of deductions.
Oh, yeah.
Based on the way their arms were folded, based on what they were wearing.
They naked.
Yeah. And the thing that bothered me about that is something G.K. Chesterton wrote that was our anthropologists will wax on about the ancient Egyptians. Well, we know the ancient Egyptians believed that people in the afterlife will eat because they buried them with food. And they'll make these deductions. And he said, 3,000 years from now, their anthropologists are going to look at England and say, well, we know that they believed their dead had a sense of smell because they bury them with flowers. Bertrand Russell's, where's the evidence for that? Is the evidence conclusive? And I thought Chakotay was really jumping the gun on a lot of things, which...
Yeah.
It might sound good in academia where you can tell some students this is the way it is, but with critical reflection, I don't know that sort of mentality pans out.
I agree that Chakotay is wrong, because when you're in Starfleet, you're out there to explore the strange new worlds, and that means sometimes you've just got to pull a James T. Kirk and date those hot Babelians. And mess up some graves and stuff.
Mess up some graves. Make a little noise. Have some fun.
One thing I might say as a sort of, as we get close to the outro, is something that's at the end of the episode.
Basically, what you're saying is when Janeway ordered Kim to take 2 days off to reflect on what happened to him.
Yeah, that's meaningful. That's really meaningful.
It is. And you don't really see that sort of thing in any other episode or series. Well, clearly we have only scratched the surface of the topic of death, but we plan to revisit this soon, maybe as a part 2 next week, I don't know, but stay tuned because we will be revisiting it. So, thanks for listening tonight. You can visit us on Trekosophy.com, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, send us an email at trekosophy@gmail.com. Please leave us a review in the iTunes Store. And send us any questions if you like. So for Ben McLean and Brandon Kirby, I'm Chris McGee. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Don't you go dying on me.
I agree with Chris.
You're still cutting out, dude.
And this is the best episode you've ever done.
Die.
Oh, that, I don't know why it was funny, but it was.
You're from Canada. And stuff. I always say stuff about you being from Canada, the captain of Canada. So let me think here.
The captain of Canada.
Yeah, I said
like
that.
Canada. This country sucks.
Oh, you want to be a zombie? Okay.
Chris, let's just make it about us. Zombie Kirby forgot his head because it wasn't attached. No? Nothing? Not a tee-hee? Don't yell at them. I work in a call center and do troubleshooting. Breaks my heart when people yell at me.
Oh.
No, it doesn't. I just laugh and hang up on them. Some people are having like the worst luck too. And then as soon as they start bringing out the F-bombs, I'm like, see ya. Love to help you, but you're a dick. That was rule number 1. I said, anybody who mentions red pill or blue pill can take those pills and shove them up their ass.